Hello my friends and welcome. Today's video is a lot different than the content you're probably used to seeing on this channel. If you guys have been following along on this journey, since the beginning, you have seen an evolution in the type of content that we've been making over here. We started as a family vlog, we turned into a New Brunswick vlog, sharing our experiences here. We've done some mini documentary type things, street interviews, creative projects. We have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun. I create what I feel inspired to create, and today is no exception. I have always really had a high appreciation for long form content in interview form, okay? I really think it's a great opportunity to get to know a person below the surface, below the headlines, and below any of the presuppositions that you might have of said person, okay? Now, having said all that, today's video is an interview of someone who we met pretty early on after our arrival to St. John, okay? There we go, got that out. Don Darling, former mayor of St. John. What can I say about Don Darling? He's a public figure, okay? He's a strong personality. He's someone who I found interesting, right from the get-go, the way he engages people. Some might criticize that, engaging maybe too often. I'll let you be the judge of that. But Don is someone who I had a great relationship with. We cross paths, we bump shoulders in the streets all the time. And it's always been nothing but love. And we've been talking about doing something like this for a long time. And you know what? I'm glad that we were finally able to make it happen. Now, I must preface this interview by saying a couple things. Okay, first off, this was my first time doing a long form interview. And with that, there was a few lessons when it comes to the technical side. I did experience a few issues with my camera. The interview was actually supposed to be filmed. I planned to film this interview outside Market Square in the new waterfront area uptown. But the day was it's probably the windiest day St. John has ever had. Okay, I don't know if that's true. It sure felt like that. So last minute decision, I got there early. I decided to go inside Market Square and I asked the security guard, I'm like, hey man, do you mind if I use that table to film an interview? And it just so happens he's like, yeah man, I watch your videos, see your YouTube channel, man, keep it up. So, having this YouTube channel, some perks come along, right? But anyways, I like the location. You'll see the location. The location is fantastic, but my camera was positioned right in the bright sun, just teaming through the window in the atrium. And, if you know anything about cameras, filming, in 4K for a long period of time, your camera gets hot, especially with that sun pounding down on it. So my camera shut off like 2 or 3 times. It was an issue through the whole thing. So you're gonna notice some gaps, okay? They're very obvious. You're not gonna miss them. Trust me, we will stop and we get things sorted. But hope to remedy that for the next time. Okay, another thing too, with the technical issues that we experienced, I found the interview went not in the direction that I expected. I thought it ended up being fantastic. We touched on a lot of stuff, but I didn't get to talk to Don about the election, his thoughts. I really wanted to dive in there, but we did touch on a lot. Talked about his time as mayor, talked about his family life, talked about his accomplishments, and I got a real deep understanding of who Don is, what he values, and it was a great conversation. So I hope you guys have as much fun listening and learning as I did speaking to Don. He's a great guy, and I hope we do it again. Don, if you're watching, hope we do it again. I want to go deeper. Let's go deeper, my friend. Anyways, let's hop in, okay? Don Darling, former mayor of St. John. Let's go. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're recording. Okay. Let's make sure we're in frame here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So first off, thank you so much. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. Yeah. It's not serious, it's just a casual chat. You're a knowledgeable person, you're a St. John icon. Wow. And for the viewers who are watching this, you are the former mayor of St. John, New Brunswick. I am. Okay. So I want to start, this was actually a recommendation from Jess, that I start with a light question. Okay. Okay? Yeah. And I know you're a big guy on books, you like to read a lot. you were, you used to post a lot,
Yep.
and not just any books, some stuff that had some spiritual hues to it, some self-actualization-ness going on there.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a David Parker book right now called The Second Mountain, I think is the title. I'll send you the note if I have to correct it. And it's basically, I'm a 54-year-old guy. It's basically, that first mountain is the whatever narrative that we climb, the corporate ladder, the work that we do. The second mountain is really meant to be really aligned with who we are, our passions, the difference we want to make in the world. And I think what I'm discovering in that exercise is that I already knew who I was, I knew what I was passionate about, but I'm really searching, Jordan, to discover what does that second mountain look like. Mm-hmm. And it may be very different than, and it already is for me, very different than the titles you chased perhaps in the past, or the pay stub that you might have chased. And now it's about making a difference in that next phase of your life. So I'm enjoying that. And then if I could just share super quick, my mom was a very avid reader, and I'd love to share with you and maybe some of your viewers. I have 2,000 of her books right now that I have logged. Mm-hmm. And if you want to talk about meaning and spiritual, and my mom was a very deep learner, so I have the task right now of finding a home for these 2,000 books. Mm-hmm. And it's a daunting task because they were very precious to my mom. So I'm not reading a whole lot right now because I'm dealing with some of that stuff in my life. Right. But I've literally got 2,000 books that I need to figure out a home for and get them into hands that people that might be ready for a new journey or to discover something new.
So you thinking like home library or
I don't know,
donation?
probably not. I mean, I have now logged all of them, if you can imagine, in an app. So I can share that spreadsheet with people. And but I think reality is going to set in where I'm going to likely have to donate them to the library right upstairs here, or to others. But I can't bring myself to just take them to a Goodwill and say, see you go. These were see you later. These were my mom's lifelong treasures. Mm-hmm. So anyway, reading was very important to her. And
Okay, let's pause real quick. I'm just going to start my voice record as well.
Sure.
Just to have a secondary audio, just in case.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. We're good to go. So I wanted to ask you then, the mountains. So I'm getting a sense you chased this, you went up and down a certain mountain, and that was maybe your time as mayor and even your previous career. So what does that second adventure look like for you? Are you sensing some things that are like, oh, maybe family, spending more time with my kids, even though they're a little bit more grown up now, spending more time with your wife, or traveling, like what is it for you? Or is it another career?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty aligned in my 40s. I'm 54 now. I would say that journey, I hadn't read the book, but I would say that journey of self-discovery and really realignment with my own values had begun probably in my early 40s. I left a corporate career after 20 years when I was 44. My dad passed away suddenly that same year. That was, not a blessing, obviously, that he got sick with cancer and died, but twice now I've been in a position when my parents became ill, both with cancer, both have died now, that I was able to be there for them every day, by their bedside, and be there. So I think the journey for me, living your values, who am I, sort of self-awareness, that began a long time ago. I wouldn't say that I'm as surprised. There hasn't been huge surprises in terms of my values and who I am and the kind of difference that I want to make. What has been a bigger struggle, though, Jordan, is what does that look like? How do you bring that to life? What do I do? And my time as mayor was very rewarding, very challenging. And the time since I finished up as mayor in 2021, the most challenging part of that has not been not being mayor. It's been when you really care, when you're empathetic, when you want to make a difference. How do you go about doing that? Mm-hmm. And that's the piece that I'm still trying to figure out.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about that, your time as mayor. but you did spark an interest, a thought I had. Your parents, like you said you're 54.
Yes.
That's not, in my eyes, that's not old. That's still, a young man. You still got a lot of years left, but both of your parents are gone now.
Yeah.
Automatically I thought of my parents and what that would be like. And, I'm 38 and I rely on my parents a lot. Like anytime I'm in a rut, anytime, something breaks in the house, it's like, I just know, hey, pick up the phone, call Dad. He'll know what to do. He'll know how to get me out of this jam.
Yeah.
What is it like navigating life on this planet without that comfort that you've always known?
That's a great question. I won't go, I'll try to keep myself from not going too deep, but we had a very challenging childhood. There was a lot of trauma there that I'm still unpacking to try to understand. My dad was a great man, but he was a lifelong alcoholic. He drank his entire life. So my early days when my mom and dad divorced, and there was some really difficult times there. And by all definitions, when my mom and dad divorced and we moved into an apartment in downtown Fredericton, we lived in poverty. My mom made $675 and rent was $375. So at night, Mom would pull up the blanket and turn the heat off, and so that really, in many ways, both healthy and unhealthy, made me the individual that I am. So today, as a 54-year-old that continues to try to learn about himself, I can look back at both my mom and dad with gratitude. My dad was an amazing man who taught me incredible lessons. He was very innovative. He was very intuitive. My mom was deeply empathetic, cared deeply about others, was a lifelong learner. Both my parents taught us to get involved, get in the fight in the sense and sometimes start the fight if you have to try to get better outcomes for people. So I have a lot of gratitude for my parents, but I miss them. There's days where you rely on those lessons that they taught you, but you say, gosh, I wish I could talk to my dad today. I wish I could talk to my mom today. And my dad was diagnosed with multiple cancers and died over 18 months. My mom and I had coffee at Catapult on November 30th last year. She said her back was sore. December 8th, she was diagnosed with multiple site cancers and died on the 28th. Died 20 days later.
Wow.
So it's very surreal, Jordan, that here we are and coming up on a year, I can't even believe it. But I don't think I've even grieved yet because her estate was complicated and you have to deal with all that adulting stuff.
Yes.
The house and dealing with her finances and all of those things. But my mom, and my dad, but my mom to even a greater extent was my hero. Mm-hmm. And we talked in some form every day. And when that phone stops ringing and the messages stop, it's a huge adjustment. Mm-hmm. So you have to recognize, that you are a combination of your parents, mm-hmm. good and maybe a little bad, in the sense, we all have strengths and weaknesses. Yes. But to know, what would mom say or what would dad say? We know that what they would say. And the legacy of our parents and their parents before them is to try to just keep moving through this world in the best way we can. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you, you mentioned, some traumas and some addiction in your family. It seems like this scene was set for you to follow along in that, because that's what oftentimes happens. We follow our parents, and oftentimes that's not in the right direction, and we're seeing that in the city. Sure. How did you manage to break the cycle? Because I would say, in my personal opinion, of what success is, you're a successful person. You've become the mayor. Politics and stuff aside, I wasn't here when you were the mayor, so I don't know how that went.
Sure.
We'll talk about that later, but that's quite an achievement, right? How did you muster the courage, or how did you find the path to get you to that point?
Well, thanks. I love the word courage, because I think courage is the strength to keep moving forward despite the fears, and I'm good at that some days, and I'm not. You know, whether I'm successful or not is or was. I mean, I'm grateful. We have 3 kids that we love, adult kids that we love. I've been married 33 years this February to a woman that I love. We have a compass that is set in the same direction in terms of our values, our morals, and how we live. We can spend an immense amount of time together. So there's so much in my life that has worked well. But I also believe it's courageous to be vulnerable, to say, you know what, we have struggle in our family. At times, my marriage with my wife has been a struggle because for whatever reason, I wasn't treating her well or we were disconnected. And, you know, the definition of success in my mind, Jordan, continues to evolve. In my 20s and 30s, success was money. How much money can I make? What's the title that I have? So, you know, my dad was an alcoholic. He was very successful. He was a professor. He contributed to society. He made a difference in a lot of students' lives. When he passed away, we heard from students all over the world. My mom had multiple careers and was a therapist. But, you know, my dad's alcoholism, in my younger years, I had an ism too. I was a workaholic. I worked day and night because I was going to provide for my family no matter what. And in that quest to be a provider, I worked 12 and 14-hour days. I didn't come home. I missed birthday parties. I missed school concerts. So the more mature, evolved Don Darling today would say that wasn't success. And I don't even know if I was fulfilled. I was making money. We had a house, we had cars, we had stuff. But if I could do some of that over, I don't think I would have done it the same way. And, you know, I think where I continue to struggle today, super vulnerable with you here, is that, you know, I didn't go to university. My dad and I didn't get along really well when I was in that stage of that decision. He was probably right. He wanted me to go to university and take business, and I was sort of rejecting that advice at that stage. I had my roommate's name at Dalhousie to take arts in Halifax, and I just said one day, this isn't for me, and I went in a different path. And I think that, you know, I've had a lot of success in my career, corporate. I've achieved a level of ownership in one of the oldest companies in Atlantic Canada. I was the mayor, as you mentioned, and I think that came from a drive and a thirst to learn, and look, made lots of mistakes along the way. But I'm struggling today with a narrative or a voice, and I don't know if you have these, but maybe a lot of your listeners may be able to relate. And it's that little saboteur, the guy that sits on your shoulder and it tells you you're not good enough, and you're not smart enough, and you're not thin enough, and you're not successful enough. So I'm struggling with the things I'm passionate about and pushing through the fear, my own advice about being courageous, to go try something, even if you fail at it. But also, we all have a reality, you know? We have mortgage maybe to pay or rent to pay. We have groceries to buy. And that can be debilitating at times because you can choose comfort over going for it and doing the kind of work that you want to do.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying of, working hard and being a total workaholic and diving into your craft. There's two sides of me because I believe to be a high achiever, you need to do that. You need to dedicate your life to your work, your craft, make it your purpose. But at the same time, as you're doing that, there's this other side of your life, which is the family person. That's the person who maybe needs to connect to nature and to foster relationships and be a community builder and all these things. But it's like when you do that, this part is suffering, and when you're going here, like this part's suffering, and it's a balance act. But I like self-actualization and spirituality. I read a ton of books on that, and I interview people like yourself, and everyone says the same thing. It's like money is not it. Every person on their deathbed, they never say, I wish I made more money. They say, I wish I spent more time with my kids, or, you know, chase that goal or did whatever. I wish I can go back in time and spend more time with my children and build relationships. But it's like, how come we have such a hard time taking the advice that every single self-help book says, and every single senior on their deathbed, they say the same thing. We don't follow it.
Yeah.
So like, do you think you still could have had the life you had, a successful life, a lot of achievements? Do you think you could have still had that if you put more time towards, you know, family and relationships and those kinds of things?
Yeah. I love the word balance. I mean, I think, you know, in the coaching world, or, you know, a lot of the self-help books, you know, you talk about businesses, for instance, that would be really great planners, and they do their annual business plans and their action plans and so on. And I think we need to do the same thing in our personal lives. And that is sit down on at least an annual basis and reflect on how are we doing in our lives in terms of our relationships, our family, our friends, our financial needs, our career, and really reflect on, well, if I want it to be an 8 and it's only a 5, then I actually am incredibly powerful with choice. Number one, we're in the driver's seat. I can be a victim like others too. I can't do it, or I have no control over it, when actually that's not true. I think the other pressure that we face, and I feel every day, is society has definitions of success, right? And I, you know, this next generation, I'm really worried for, because of the influence of social media, body image, you know, finances or wealth, houses, cars, and all these things. When, you know, if I could tell my younger self one thing, or a couple of things, I would say figure out fulfillment and joy, and what is it going to take for you to feel good enough, and don't worry about everything else. You know, and I just think it takes a tremendous amount of courage, Jordan, to, you know, to go through life trying to live your values, being decent, having integrity, but also being open.
We are back. Some technical difficulties.
No problem. You're recording? It's going again?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure where we left off, but let's, I don't want to, I'll be conscious of your time.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I want to ask you about your time as mayor. You know, looking back, you've had time to reflect now. It's been a few years. What is something that you are proud to have accomplished as mayor?
I think there's two things, and I have had a lot of reflection about this, and I hope you have a follow-up question to maybe the other side. But yeah, I think, you know, first and foremost, I think the focus. I thought it was really important to bring focus to root cause issues that could have a lasting legacy. So the focus on growth, which has some other sides, of course, the focus on getting our finances under control, but protecting those in financial policies that were going to lead to tax rate reductions and financial policies. I think that was very positive. And I think the way that I engaged with the public, for the most part, and what I mean by that, showed up. Not always proud of how I engage with individual interactions, but I loved being out in the public. I loved working hard day to day, but also being out at the events. And no matter who you were, you reached out, doing my best to try to connect with you. And I'm proud of the way that I showed up from the perspective of, you know, having those conversations on the street corner were more important to me, not knocking the conversations in boardrooms, but the people in boardrooms always have access to elected officials. So I think showing up for people, I'm proud of the way I did that.
And in contrast, looking back, is there anything in particular that you would have done differently, or if you were mayor again, that you would do differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I have reflected, not quite daily, but weekly for sure. I think we had really tough issues that we were dealing with, and there were things going on behind the scenes that people didn't know about. I'm not proud of how some of the conversations, for instance, with unions or first responders were framed under pressure. And, you know, I said at the time, I had deep respect and do have deep respect for the role of unions and first responders. I don't blame some of those folks for not believing that. And I want to deeply and sincerely apologize to the families of, you know, union members, but first responders in particular, who I think may have walked away, and I would understand, with this sense that I didn't care about them. And that's not true. And yeah, so I've reflected about that weekly for sure. How could we have had those conversations in a different way? That, yeah, the challenge is still there, but how do we work together? I was asking for that kind of collaboration, but it still doesn't excuse the way that's sometimes how I showed up.
Yeah. So did you have that sort of insight while you were still there, or is it afterwards? So is there ever,
for sure.
Is there ever a time, like, as mayor, okay, you know, it didn't go the way that you wanted it to, you feel a little bit uneasy in your heart with, you know, because you care about people, right? Why can't a mayor be like, you know what, guys, I'm sorry, this wasn't handled right. It's finished. Is that possible in politics?
Absolutely. I'd like to believe that I did that, Jordan. I because I'm the same I'm a more evolved person today, but I think more politicians need to do that. I mean, it's I've given a lot of thought to this over the last year in particular, and I believe the foundation, as I mentioned the other day, is decency and integrity and accountability, right? Because decent people who have integrity are going to hold themselves accountable. They're going to circle back. They're going to say those kinds of things, you know, in the moment when new information, you know better, do better. When new information comes about, they're gonna say, hey, last week I shared something with you, it wasn't accurate, I apologize, or I had a conversation in the heat of the moment on a Facebook Live, and I don't like the way I said it. And we need to work together. And you know, what the public doesn't know, I've had a couple of opportunities. Let me give you an example. I've had an opportunity with a firefighter here in the city who reached out to me last Christmas, before Christmas. And he let me, he communicated to me how he felt. And I thanked him for doing that. A lot of people wouldn't have, because you know, he told me how he felt. And I asked him if he would go have a coffee. And we did. And we spent a couple of hours together. And I think we hugged when we were done. Because I shared context, and he said, whoa, I didn't know that. And he shared context, and I said, oh, I didn't know that. So I think our politics has gotten so divisive, and our ability to have conversations with each other has eroded, because maybe we don't have the skill, but I'm not even going to go there. I just think we're more anxious than ever. We're more overworked than ever. People are trying to find their purpose and their direction. And I think it's easier to fight with each other than to sit down together and say, I bet you we can find a solution. Yeah. If we're both committed to that, we'll find a solution. So I just think context is so critically important in conversations. But yeah, anyway, why don't they do it? I think it takes strength and courage to admit that we're wrong and circle back. So maybe we're missing some of that. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just make one more adjustment here.
Yep.
I'm going to see if I can just get it to not shut off when it overheats.
Yeah. How are you?
It doesn't work because it doesn't shut off.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, I just have a couple more for you.
Yep.
Yeah, so we talked about, you know, you being mayor. Okay. I can't open this can of worms because this will be you know, a 2-hour conversation at least. Let's talk about then. I just want to pick a topic that won't keep us here for the whole day, because we are in an election cycle.
Sure.
Maybe, you know, okay, so here's my thoughts. Maybe you can just give me some information or context that I might be lacking here.
Yep.
We were both at the St. John Harbor debate. last week. You know, and we listened to everyone speak, and it seems to me that the big three problems, housing, affordability, and healthcare, are things that, you know, all the parties want to address. And they all bleed into each other. From where I'm sitting, it seems like government, especially when it comes to housing and affordability, doesn't have any control over the things that they're talking about, because they're too tightly woven to the economy, and we're in a global economy, and even at government at the federal level might not be able to help with affordability or help with housing. Yeah. So where does that leave us? Are we actually helpless in this? Is it kind of like just hold on and we'll see where this takes us, or does the government have any chance at making our lives a little bit better, if it's within their power?
Well, first of all, I think it's important. Again, something I think about every day is acknowledging that people I think they're scared, anxious. We see a level of crisis around us, homelessness that I just believe we have to meet with empathy and resources, not anger and blame on those amongst us that are the most marginalized and being impacted. There are people working full time right now, Jordan, living in tents, having meals delivered to them after they get off their shift, trying to keep their Tim Hortons or dollar store uniform clean for the next day. Mm-hmm. So we can't normalize that. I think people are very anxious. I think people lack, have low trust in their elected officials at all levels. And I think there's a lot of valid reasons for that. Mm-hmm. We're not going to change those things overnight. But again, I don't mean to be so repetitive, but I think we have to, the character of the people we elect matters. The diversity of the people we elect matters. That we see ourselves in our elected officials. And that our elected officials have the ability to not only bring empathy to conversations, but bring action to those conversations. So I actually believe the opposite, and not the opposite of what you've said, but I think there are many options for healthcare, housing, cost of living, education, a number of those, and there are a lot of experts that have been making suggestions for a long time. And we're not going to get there if we don't empower a team. You may have been the best hockey player in the world, Jordan. You don't win hockey games by yourself. Right. You might go once in a while, you may go up and score on your own, but you were successful because you played with teammates. Always. They could rely on you, you could rely on them. We could learn from you in politics, because we don't do that very well. It's not, even at City Hall where there are no parties, it's not constructive. It's not a good team, right? So we have to start there. You have to start with a team with people with good character, who are decent with integrity, and then you have to have political will. And I'm not anti-Irving, but if we have money for billionaires, we have money to solve homelessness, right? If we really want to make taxation fair, we can change it, but it's going to mean change, right? And I'm not an expert in healthcare, but if I was a minister, if I was the premier, I would assemble the best minds, and I would say we don't have unlimited resources. We have to innovate. We have to do other things. I would work on, chronic and emergency care, but I would also empower people that want to live in a healthy way, that need help, that, nutrition. Like, how do we work on short, medium, and longer term strategies? Housing, it was talked about the other day in the forum. When you have a necessity of life, and places like Finland have done an amazing job of not prioritizing profit over people. And I think here, and I worked for 2 decades in housing. I can tell you how profitable housing is. It's a very profitable business. The problem is you and I need it to survive. So we talked earlier about balance. So if you get the right people in the room who are willing and have the political will to make tough decisions, which often might mean you're going to piss off, excuse my language, influential people, then we can find more balance and we can get better results. So I think most of our problems can be solved if we have the will to do it. But most of our politics, in my opinion today, I'm very engaged and educated on the topics, and I open my phone up and I find it a struggle. Is that real or not? And where's the data? And how do I understand what's going on? So I think most people are just disconnecting, right? So I think we have to tackle it. You know, do you give up when I'm horrible with sport analogies, but you know, you've got the number one team in the league. You know, do you just not lace your skates up and not try, or do you lace the skates up and get on the ice and try? So we've got to have people that empower teams that have the will to make tough decisions, resource, like put the money where it needs to be, and measure our progress. And I think we can make progress.
So I don't know much about politics, the inner workings of it. But when I'm hearing you speak, it sounds like there's many systems at play, and there almost needs to be like a CEO essentially for healthcare, one for housing, one for whatever. Is it unheard of to treat? We'll just keep it to provincial government and treat it like it's a business. So if I'm the premier, it's like, okay, can I look abroad? Like, is there a politician or not a business person out there who has totally transformed a world, their company? They've done it there, so they know how to do this. Let's bring them here. Let's hire them in. Let's bring them in from outside. Yeah. Or is it always, people working their way up through the system who it's not their expertise to manage like healthcare, for the province, but like they've just kind of worked their way into this spot. You know, like I feel like that happens a lot. But in sports, it's like, we'll go to hockey, for example. That's my world. Hey, we can't score goals. Like, we need to make a trade so that we can bring in someone who's that's the best thing that they do. Right. And they come in, they assess the team, where they can fit in, they find their role. Not only with the hard skills, but with where do they fit in with this team? What kind of role can they play? Sure. I don't know. Like, does this sound crazy? Because I feel like a lot of our problems, it's like, it's with the system. The system always seems to be getting in the way, bureaucracy and things like that. Like, is what I'm saying crazy? Or no, not at all. I don't know if you want to check that. It's good. It's good. Okay, sorry. So no, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But the answers, I think people want really simple answers in politics, and there aren't many. And I think what some people react. I mean, I think there's lessons to be learned from the business world. Planning, a clarity of strategy and objectives, action plans, holding people accountable, measuring progress. Right. Those are all things that we can learn and take to the public sector. But there are nuances that are different as well. And I think that's our current premier's biggest downfall, is that he's been probably frustrated by the system, but it just doesn't work that way. You don't get to make all the decisions on your own, right? And we don't need knee-jerk reactions where you're firing CEOs and firing board of directors, because I know the chair of the board that got fired that day, and he would say, we made 20 recommendations, government didn't act on any of them, right? Yeah. So I think there's an attitude I think that we have about civil servants is that they don't care, they're overpaid. That's not true. I mean, I think the same challenges that exist in the private sector can exist in the public sector. I think if you were to have one of these chats, if they would, and they probably won't, to a high-level civil servant, they would say, Jordan, we've been making these recommendations for 2 decades, and the elected official won't make the decision because they're afraid of losing votes. Yeah. So we need elected officials who have the fortitude, the mind, the heart to go into the role and make the right decisions and not worry about the next election, because that's what ends up happening, and it happens at all levels of government. So I think solutions again exist. I think there's lessons to be learned, but most private sector organizations are in it for profit. And I guess, and I've been reading about this from all over the world, Jordan. I think until we've defined success
economic, social, cultural, environmental, with a focus on well-being of citizens, all citizens, regardless of who they love or what they look like, then we're going to continue to sort of, one government goes in this direction, another government goes in that direction. Wouldn't it be nice to know this is what we're striving for? And who cares who's in government? That's the goal. Keep moving forward. Keep moving down the field, like a relay race.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Lord of the Flies, the book, because one party there is like, we need to hunt, we need meat to survive, and the other's like, no, we need to build a fire for the signal for help. And the thing is, both sides are right.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like your worldview, but the underlying thing, but I think both parties can agree on, is that survival is number one.
Yeah. I think we need big changes to our electoral system, right? People are not voting. About 50% of people vote. People are apathetic. They don't trust. So again, I think there are recommendations like proportional representation, so that if a party gets 25% of the vote, 25% of the MLAs in the House come from that party, right? So that if we really cared about, so often what happens, right? I mean, I can tell you, I'm a person of integrity, but if you believe I'm not acting with integrity, well, then there's a mismatch. So there isn't a politician that won't tell you they don't care about democracy, but are their behaviors aligned? So what does a functioning democracy look like? It looks like the diversity in the community. It engages meaningfully. It shares openly and transparently. So there's a lot of gaps in our system right now, and I'm really passionate. I think if we can engage and educate and engage and empower people, individuals, folks like you and I, to actively engage in our politics and hold people accountable, we'll get better results.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. There's a whole bunch of things I wanted to ask you, but I don't think we'll have time this one, so we'll have to do this again.
Perfect.
But I want to finish with one question.
Sure.
Okay, we'll change the direction a bit, and we'll leave on a light note.
Okay.
If you could give advice, to the people watching this video, any advice, life advice, advice how they should be a better citizen, or how they should treat their kids, whatever. This is your opportunity. What would you say to the people watching?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say don't take your life for granted. Sit in the driver's seat and point in the direction that brings you joy and fulfillment and love, and know that no matter what you do, each and every one of us has an incredible opportunity in every interaction to make a difference in someone else's life by being decent, by being empathetic and caring, by smiling, by holding a door open. So I just drive the car is called your life, and know that we are immensely powerful, and that nothing changes until something changes. So you don't have to figure it all out in one journal entry. Every month, every year, make sure you're sitting down and giving yourself some time to say, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Do I have joy in my life? And if not, change it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much,
Well,
Mr. Don Darling, former mayor of St. John. Appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
Great to see you.
Okay, there you go. So there you have it. Former mayor of St. John, New Brunswick, Don Darling. It was a great conversation. Thank you, Don, for your time. I learned a lot. Next time we'll go deeper, and I hope you guys enjoyed this type of content. I'm really excited about it. I want to do a lot more of this stuff going forward and keep improving, keep improving. Watching the playback of the interview, there was a lot that happened that it didn't occur to me, at the time. It wasn't until watching it back that you notice parts where, you could have jumped in or said something different, or asked a better question, or asked Don to expand on certain areas of what he said. All this stuff, guys, I'm learning. I'm gonna learn by doing. That's the best way to learn anything. So, yeah, there you have it. So much fun. If you, or maybe you know somebody, or have someone in mind who you think would be awesome for me to sit down and chat with, hit me up. Hit me up. DMs, comments, I don't know. Get a hold of me, my friend. You can reach me. All my information's down in the description, okay? I want to sit down with some more interesting characters, some people, figures, icons, thought leaders, community builders, all those awesome people, okay? Whew, did I get it all? I think I did, all right? Big shout out to our patrons, okay? Thank you guys so much for the support. If you, my friend, would like to support this channel, this content, you find value, you just want to say, you know what, man, thank you for making this content about the city I love or this province, or I just found you randomly, but I like what you're doing. You can become a patron, or you can leave us a one-time tip, buy us a coffee, I don't know what it's called, down below, okay? Thank you in advance for that. That's all, okay? If you made it to this point in the video, I love you. I love you so much. Thank you for watching. Hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.